Alright, I'm going to make a few videos here because there's a lot to tell. I'm going to start with 2016. Alright, so I'd known who Natalie and Alicia were for, well, since they were about 13, I suppose. We hung out with some of the same people. Derek Parrish. He was 18 when I met him. I used to hang out with him and his mom. Maddie Boa was friends with Derek Parrish, and Natalie and Alicia were friends with Maddie. I used to try to convince them kids to not hang out down there because it wasn't just Derek and Janine down there. It was also a bunch of people who were, well, you know what kind of people I'm talking about. I don't have to bring that up again, but I will be bringing them up a lot in these videos. So I ran into Natalie and Alicia after, well, in 2015, on my birthday, I hurt my back. I had a shop outside of Boulder, Colorado on 75th and Arapahoe. And I had a job at Stone Lighting. Veronica Randall hooked me up with that job. I was trying to buy a S10 pickup from Veronica Randall's boyfriend, Brandon Ratner. I had already paid them $200 for it, and I was just a couple of days short of my birthday. I almost had enough money. The day before my birthday, I was only $100 short of getting it completely paid off. Josh Hughes, he was a guy that I knew. He helped with computers. He used to take some of my junk computers that I got out of dumpsters, and he'd put them together. Sometimes people would just bring me donation computers, and we'd put them together. And these donation computers went to homeless people who had computer skills so that they could utilize those skills to try to make money. Josh broke up with his girlfriend, Laura, and he needed a place to stay. I told him he could bring his stuff out to my garage, but he couldn't stay there, or to my shop. Well, he was out there playing video games until 4 o'clock in the morning, really loud, no headphones, lights on. You know, this is out at a farm, and the guy isn't supposed to have anybody out there. So we got into trouble and got kicked out of there the day before my birthday. So all of my money that I had went to moving everything out of the shop. And when we moved everything out of the shop, I paid a guy named John Harder $100 for the use of his truck, and I believe an additional $50 for helping with labor. We were moving a gun lathe that I had converted over to make World War I aircraft engines in miniature. And it was about 800 pounds, and all my helpers that I had paid to help me all dropped it at once. And it really screwed up my back. So after I hurt my back, I didn't have any money. All of it had been spent on moving, on, you know, getting storage. And, you know, I'd had my teeth taken out, and, you know, I was not real pretty talking anymore. People were a lot more liberal about using the N-bomb and being racist, which I'm against. Well, Veronica Randall and Brandon Ratner helped me to move as well. It wasn't just me and John, and there was about 6 of us out there. And when I hurt my back, Veronica was telling me that I could still work out there at Stone Lighting. She'd talk to Nick, my boss, who is, by the way, a really cool boss. I loved having him as a boss. But I couldn't. I literally could not physically make it there. I had a bicycle, that I could no longer sit on in order to go to do all those things. And I had explained to Veronica that I couldn't get on that bike. In texting, she kept on hounding me about stuff like the bike. What happened to the bike we gave you? Well, you didn't give it to me. It was a trade. There's a big difference between a trade and a gift. It was over at Josh Hughes' house, because after he got us kicked out, his parents rented him a place in Boulder, and he spent all of his time and money getting drunk and doing drugs, and trying to get laid. So I needed help, and I paid him to help me so that I would know how to do the things that I needed to do with computers. Instead of doing that, he told me what to do and just took my money. Well, I was having some issues with my back problems and with the cops harassing me every night. I mean, with a good back, I was able to find good hiding spots, and I was able to get into those hiding spots and not get camping tickets. But after I hurt my back, I was basically stuck behind the Cheesecake Factory because of my burden. That's what we call our backpack when we're homeless. And my backpack got stolen by one of my brother's friends. I was sleeping behind the pedestrian shop, and I was setting up cardboard boxes behind it. The pedestrian shop is right across the alley from the Cheesecake Factory. Matter of fact, it was behind the pedestrian shop that I found my friend Danny dead. So I found Danny dead in 2014. We're talking about 2015 and 2016 now, so we should probably get back to that. I ran into Natalie and Alicia. They were walking down the street with some men that were obviously much older than them. And one of them, I don't remember which, because at the time I didn't know which was which. I didn't know their names even. And one of them ran over and gave me a hug, and they told me their names, and they told me, that they had missed me, and how great and wonderful it was to see me, and they made me feel loved. And Natalie and Alicia both asked me to hit them up on Facebook. I figured it had been a few years since I've seen them. They were probably old enough to associate with, but they couldn't hang out with me until they showed me ID. So I hit them both up on Facebook and didn't really think nothing of it. And quite a few months later, both of them had sent messages back to me. Now, keep in mind that after 8 months of not seeing what it is that I had sent them, the only way that they're going to be able to see that I sent them something is by typing in my name. If they're not typing my name in on Facebook, they're not going to see my name on Facebook. They're not going to see the messages that I sent. So they were, well, according to you guys, if you look up somebody you know, it's stalking. So apparently they were stalking me way back then. But that's not the way that I looked at it. For me, I want to believe the best in people, whereas you guys want to assume the worst in me. After I hurt my back, I was pretty well stuck at Starbucks. I couldn't go anywhere because I had my burden with me. And after it got stolen, there was a lady who worked there named Nicole, and Nicole Van Duzer. Well, Nicole Van Duzer, I'm sorry about the screaming. There's a autistic woman here who, she doesn't speak, so she screams a lot. She also throws things and bites and hits, and I've been through quite a bit of abuse in the last month since I've been here. But we ought to get back to the story, I suppose. So I'm at Starbucks with a messed up back, and Veronica Randall, texting with her and explaining to her, please call me, please. You're typing a bunch of mean stuff, Veronica, and I can't handle it. I need you to call me instead of assuming and telling me what a terrible person I am in typing. Or making the same suggestion, pretending that I'm not trying. It was about taxes, believe it or not. She wanted to do my taxes for me. She was trying to do something sweet. Unfortunately, I was explaining to her, which she types rapid fire, and then it's not her fault that I can't type that fast. That's her excuse for bombarding me with this shit when I'm begging her to stop. Please stop. You know, I'm using literally this phone right here is the one I was using. And it only gets 160 characters, so I have to shorten everything. And while I'm busy trying to type it, she's rapid firing texts at me. So by the time I get my message sent, I've answered something 5 or 6 sentences back from her, maybe even more. But she's not reading it that way. She's reading it as, oh, Shawn must have read everything that I typed and he's answering to the last part. Well, no, I'm not. I'm still trying to finish my reply to your first question. So with the taxes, it was complicated for me because I'd explained to her already, I'm trying to go see Jesse at the Cheesecake Factory so that I can get my W-2s. And she's like, she's pushing this tax thing. I don't have the ability to do what she wants right now at this very moment, but she wants instant gratification. I'm sorry, Veronica, I can't do that. I have to wait for Jesse to show up at work to get the W-2 from him. And then she's throwing the bike in my face and the taxes in my face. And I'm like, listen to me, Veronica. Listen to the help that I need. You need to call me. When you're texting me, I'm having an anxiety attack because Veronica's a very mean texter who doesn't care what you type. She doesn't read it. She's too busy assuming the worst and typing mean shit. So, wonderful person in person, depending on what kind of a mood she's in and how insecure she's feeling. Because if she's feeling insecure, she gets really mean. And, Brandon can attest to this too. So can, Brian Townsend. But we'll get back to 2016. It's the beginning of 2016. My back's been screwed up for a bit. Veronica Randall and I stopped being friends, and I didn't want to talk to her after that. I was done with her. I was done with that BS, and I was done with Josh Hughes, too, by that point. What happened with Josh Hughes is, when I hurt my back, people didn't come and see me, and I didn't have the ability to go and see them. I needed help. I was going completely crazy, and the cops wouldn't leave me alone, so instead of averaging 3 hours of sleep a night, I was averaging less than 1. So, there was a lady there whose name was Devin Cockerill, and there was a song called Lost Boy by Ruth B. And I was watching that video. It was the first time I'd ever seen it, and I was thinking about all my friends who had died in 2015 and 2016, and that song just reminded me of them, and it made me cry. And Devin Cockerill came over. She was really sweet. She said, you want to go out and have a beer with me after work? I said, well, I don't drink, but I'd love to. Well, after work, she walked out of the building right past me like she didn't even see me. She actually hadn't seen me, apparently, which is weird because I was standing maybe 20 feet from her. And I didn't have the ability to run after her. I haven't been able to run since I hurt my back. The impact, it kills my back. It's terrible. So, I was feeling pretty bad about that. I wasn't sure what I had done wrong. And, Devin invited me to her house. Which I have rules against going to their houses. Don't go to anyone from Starbucks' house. Stay professional and courteous, and that's the way that it was at Starbucks for a lot of years. Well, they had just changed managers. The one that they had before, she was a very sweet lady, but they replaced her with a lady named Jennifer, who didn't know me from anybody else. And I was having a severe panic attack, and when I went to Devin's house, I was, trying to explain to her that, well, Alright, when Devin had walked past me like she didn't even see me, Josh Hughes was still talking to me. I was pissed off at him, but I was still doing my best to be friends with him. You know, I mean, things happen. That doesn't mean that I can go treating him like crap just because, you know, I got the short end of the stick over his decisions. And it's not his fault that my mommy and daddy didn't rent me a place. And he's not a bad person because his mommy and daddy rented him a place. He's just lucky because his mommy and daddy rented him a place. So, with Devin, I was trying to let her know that I'm not really into dating, but I also don't understand what was going on. I didn't. When she invited me to her house, I basically had so much anxiety that I just spilled everything at her. You know, I'm wanting to leave. This is because of some stuff that was going on with Josh, and also because, you know, I didn't want Devin to feel uncomfortable, which is odd because I'm in her house. She invited me to her house. We smoked some weed together. And she gave me a card. It had her name on it and her phone number, and it said responsible human being. Now, this is important. This card is extremely important because if I'd remembered I had this card, I could have headed off all of this to begin with. I could have headed off that panic attack by calling her and talking to her. Well, I didn't remember that I had that card until I found it in Chapel, Nebraska months later. Um, so with Devin, a lot of people at Starbucks were friends of mine. Um, there was a young woman named Ray and a guy named Chris, and they were trying to help me work through it. They were trying to help me cope with it. Now, Devin, when I was over at her house, had told me that, uh, well, she hadn't told me that she was moving. Um, I found that out later from Nicole Van Duzer. So, Devin and I had a good long conversation, and the next day she put $50 on my Starbucks card because I had told her that I was moving, and I was planning on moving. So that very day, I was telling Nicole Van Duzer that I was moving, and she said, "Why?" I said, "Well, because, you know, I don't understand what's going on with Devin. I don't know what I did wrong. Um, but, you know, I don't feel comfortable here, and people who work here are treating me differently, which is strange for me because in 7 years of going to Starbucks, everybody was always good to me. And so I tried to set it up a couple of times to my castle thing. That's been long going. I wanted to discuss that with some folks in Starbucks and invited them to a social thing at another Starbucks, the one on University and Broadway. And that's where Ray was working by that point. Um, but it didn't happen. Nobody showed up. The people who said that they would didn't show up, and that included Devin. And I tried to invite Devin to uh, a public place where we could talk one-on-one and we could both feel comfortable. And she said that she would, but she didn't have time. And then finals week came in, and she was completely overstressed. And Nicole Van Duzer told me that I didn't need to move, that uh, Devin was going to be moving in 2 weeks. So I just had to wait it out for 2 weeks, and then it'd be fine. Well, I waited it out for that 2 weeks. The whole time I'm having a panic attack, and the whole time, you know, I'm freaking out because Devin keeps telling me that she's going to talk to me, but she's not. And the manager actually came and talked to me once about it. She's like, Shawn, everybody here at the Starbucks loves you. And I don't know you, but, you know, if there's an issue, you know, let me know and I'll see what I can do to help. I explained to her a little bit about the issue with Devin and that, you know, I didn't mean any harm. And a lot of it was, you know, because Josh Hughes, when he found out that she invited me out for a beer, he's got a really big crush on her. So, you know, he's like, well, is it right if I fuck her? I'm like, oh my God, dude. Fucking get the hell away from me, man. Just go away. All right? This isn't funny. This is a fucked up situation, and I don't need you being like that, especially after getting us kicked out of my shop. In that shop, I was working on making the world a better place. That's been my goal, to make sure that things that happened to me as a child don't happen to people anymore. If we don't do anything to stop it, it continues. Well, about that time, that's when Natalie came back into my life. And at first, it wasn't Natalie, it was her sister. Her and a guy named Pierre were, he's the one, by the way, who Dino stabbed Brian Farmer and Jared Wallace over at Pierre's house over Haley Smith being drunk and stupid and starting drama. She literally got 2 men killed. She was dating Brian Farmer at the time. I always remembered Brian Farmer as being funny. He laughed at my jokes. He liked them. So Pierre and Alicia were there, and I didn't know Natalie from Alicia at that point still. I knew their names by this point, but I couldn't tell them apart. And later on, me and Natalie texted about that, because she was like, yeah, that was actually my sister that you saw with Pierre. It wasn't me. But she came into Starbucks one day, and this is after I decided that, you know, I didn't want to live anymore. I didn't want to put up with the abuse anymore. I didn't want the Boulder Police Department going out of their way to destroy my life anymore. I wanted them to just leave me alone. I was losing Starbucks, and I couldn't stop the panic attack because all of the people at Starbucks were treating me differently, and it made me feel uncomfortable. That was some place where I was safe. Miss Roberta Richardson made it safe. So I had stuck around waiting on Devin to leave, and Devin decided she wasn't leaving. So I decided I was going to kill myself in a Starbucks bathroom. I went and got myself a whole bunch of Vicodin, and I was going to take them. Well, that's when Natalie came in. She walked into the Starbucks and came and talked to me. There was 2 women who came and saw me that day. One of them was Brianna Hernandez Cordona, who I lost my virginity to. I told her that I would meet her there. She wanted to meet me there in a couple of days. Well, a couple of days later, I wasn't there. I've been trying to apologize to her ever since. But Natalie came in, and I was on my way to the bathroom to take those pills. So, Natalie came in, and she sat down and talked with me and told me how much she had missed me, and that she used to think she was in love with me. And she also told me that she had wanted to kill herself 100 times since she saw me last, and that the thing that kept her from killing herself was thinking of me. And I was thinking in my head, if I take these Vicodin today, like I was planning, and I die, she's going to kill herself. So I couldn't take the Vicodin. I flushed them down the toilet, and I tried to get on with my life. Things weren't working out so well at Starbucks, and I left. I didn't feel comfortable there anymore. People at Starbucks were still nice to me, though. So, Devin, I was trying to explain to her, I wrote her a letter, and I don't write all that great when I'm having a panic attack. It just doesn't come out right. A lot of the jargon that I use is jargon that I learned in the system or on the streets, that people who aren't from the system or the streets, they're not going to understand the lingo. So that's why it's important to talk to people. And people weren't talking to me. They were just typing at me, not caring that it was giving me severe panic attacks. And I'd explain it to them, and then it's like, when I tell them that hurts me, they stop talking altogether and only text me. And then they text every bad assumption that they could probably possibly text at me. Well, I got to hang out with her and Maddie. Natalie had hung out with me that day for probably about 2 or 3 hours. She was supposed to meet Maddie on the courthouse lawn on Pearl Street. And she came to Starbucks, and her and Natalie both sat down with me. Because at that point, you know, they were supposed to meet up. At least they had finally met up. Natalie actually had forgotten entirely about Maddie because she was talking to me. Instead of telling Natalie about all my problems, I listened to her tell me about hers. And she had a childhood with abuse almost as bad as the abuse I went through. Or worse, because it was her family who did it, whereas my family just didn't care. It was the system who did it. I don't know if you guys can hear the screaming in the background. I hope not. So, Natalie, was coming through and trying to help me out. Maddie was talking to me every single day. She was coming to make sure I was okay. And, the cops were still harassing me every day. I still couldn't go anywhere. And Natalie gave me a ride with my stuff to, drop it off at storage, so I had a backpack light enough that I could travel. Thank goodness. And she was telling me about her boyfriend Tim and what a POS he was, and how her family, no matter what she did, they were accusing her of being on drugs, and it made her want to do drugs. Imagine that. It's kind of like when you tell somebody they won't kill themselves. It does make them want to kill themselves more because they need your help. They're suicidal because they need help, and not the help you want to give them, the help that they need. They know what help they need, and they'll tell you what help they need. It's the fact that you won't hear what help they need. You want to shove all your stuff on them that they end up cutting themselves or killing themselves. So, they rescued me over at St. John's Church, and that was, I want to say, June of 2016. Natalie was trying to hook me up with a job. She was working for 3 different roofers, and she was also working with a company where they try to save the bees. And she was trying to get me a job there, and I totally would have dug that. But because of my back issues, and because of the police not leaving me alone, and because I no longer had a safe place there, I had to go somewhere and heal up. I was living over by the Boulder Public Library by that point, sleeping underneath the pigeon shit bridge is what we call it. It's because it's a bunch of pigeon poop under there. And I was staying under there because the weather had been pretty bad. But thank goodness Natalie had come through for me with my backpack and going out to storage, because if she hadn't, I wouldn't have been able to make it down to Pigeon Ship Bridge. I would have ended up soaked. And my stuff got stolen again. I got my computer stolen and a whole bunch of my other stuff by one of my brother's friends, and they threw it all across the parking garage, the police annex parking garage on 17th and Pearl. So I needed to heal up, and Candace Dale, it's also Bondurant. She has a few different aliases, but all growing up in Chapel, Nebraska, she was Candace Dale. Her brother was my best friend for a bit until he got into a car accident and died. So Candace came and got me, and Natalie was telling me that she needed me. She needed me there. She needed a friend, and I explained to her that I was just going to be gone just long enough to heal up for a bit. I just needed to take my backpack off and not be harassed by cops for a bit. So I went to Candace's house, and I started to heal up a bit, and David and Laura Nelson offered me a vehicle. So I ended up staying a bit longer because I needed to pay off that vehicle. Well, because I wasn't there, Natalie decided that she absolutely had to leave. Um, and she had her, me, Maddie, and Alicia had planned on meeting up in Denver. Um, and we picked a day and a time, and um, Aunt B, that's Brenda Dickinson. They were screaming loud. Brenda Dickinson, her niece, had given me a ride down there on the day that I was supposed to go meet them, and they didn't answer their phones. None of those three ladies answered their phones, and I had to. I suppose I should back up just a tiny bit. In order to pay for that car, I got a job at Subway. It's just south of the border of Nebraska in a town called Julesburg. And Andrew Witcher had an ex-girlfriend named Bree. Bree was an assistant manager there, and she got me the job there. Well, my back was still screwed up, and standing there making sandwiches was killing my back. But I made sure that I did it, made sure that I forced my way through that. Um, but one day on the way to work, I started having severe heart palpitations. And when I have those, I lay down on my back, and that helps to make it stop. But if I'm standing up, it keeps on going. So on the way to work, I ended up having to go to the hospital. When I went to the hospital, it didn't work out so good. They wanted me to come back in for more tests. They said they couldn't read anything, because, and I explained to them it's because I was laying down, but I also told them that my fingers were numb and my appendages were cold, my toes and my fingers especially, which means that it's a blood circulation problem. I didn't know what was going on. I thought maybe I'm having a heart attack. I don't know. Because I wasn't having a panic attack at the time. And the pain from having a panic attack hurts different. So I ended up losing my job there at Subway, but I was able to pay off that car that I got from David and Laura. That's the Honda Civic that I drove to Virginia in. Well, Natalie wanted to meet me. She wanted to meet up with me, and her sister were going to drive to Virginia, and they were going to stop in Chapel, Nebraska, and see me on the way. Well, they let me know they weren't able to, but Natalie really wanted to see me before she left, and she had actually talked to me a little bit and said she wasn't going to get on the airplane unless I came to see her. So that's when I set it up with Brenda Dickinson and her niece, Shauna, who Shauna and her boyfriend gave me a ride down to Denver, and I had to be back the next day for a hospital visit in Julesburg to do a stress test where you walk on a treadmill, and they put a bunch of radioactive isotopes in your body, and then you go sit in this machine, and it reads the radioactive isotopes. So when they didn't answer their phones, they let me know how sad they were that I couldn't make it because they didn't answer until I was already on my way back to Nebraska. I mean, I needed to get my heart worked on. I needed it to not be a negative thing. Well, Candace had kicked me out. She said that her children's dad found out that I was staying there and that she was afraid of getting her kids taken because he's an abusive asshole who, if he found out a male was staying in the house with his daughters, he'd flip shit or whatever. So I left. And I moved in with Aunt B and Uncle D for a little bit in their spare bedroom. Um, it was while I was staying in their spare bedroom, matter of fact, after I had gotten back from going to visit them in Denver and they weren't there, I was staying in the spare bedroom, and Natalie had gotten on the plane and gone to Virginia, and she called me one night to say that no matter what she does, her family accuses her of being on heroin. No matter what she does, everything is messed up. And her dad and her uncle got busted with meth, and there's people trying to kill them, and she's freaking out about this. And she had already sent me that email about her dad molesting her and trying to beat her stepmother to death, among other things, as well as her mother, her real mother, and all of her abusive relationships, and the fact that she allowed a man who beat her child, allowed a man who was not allowed around her child, she let that man live with them, even though she wasn't supposed to. There was a protection order against him. So, when they went to Virginia, I'm keeping this stuff in mind, what kind of a situation that they're possibly in. And she's telling me that she really needs me there. She really, really needs me there. And I let her know that I didn't have the money to go, but as soon as I did, I would be on my way. And I'd already been trying to earn the money to go for a while, but it just hadn't worked out. All of my money just kept on getting eaten by all of those little life surprises that end up costing so much. So, she ran her car into a telephone pole in Virginia that day. And after that, I was like, you know what? I'm going to see her no matter what. She really needs a friend. She's cut her, so that means that people don't listen to her, and she needs somebody to listen. I'm going to keep my word, and I'm going to go. So I busted my ass to go, and I was on the road, and I was almost to, I was in Missouri, I believe, when I got a call from Jamie Curtis, saying that she needed a hero. Well, Jamie is the girl I thought I was in love with. If there's anybody that I would have stalked, it would have been her. Not so much because of her, but mostly because of the boy. He's my favorite person on the planet. So I let Natalie know. I didn't want her feeling like she wasn't important, And another thing I'm always worried about is I don't tell girls that they're pretty. I don't tell them that they're attractive or anything like that. So, I don't want them getting the feeling that they're ugly and I don't like them or anything like that. So I tried to at least keep them informed of what's going on. Um, so I let her know I wanted to go back and rescue Jamie, and my car was broken at this point. So I had to get a tow back to Chapel. There was a guy who picked me up there in Missouri. It was at a rest stop, and my car was broken down when Jamie called. He was able to give me a ride almost all the way back to Chapel. His route took him most of the way there. So when I got to Chapel, I was able to get my car fixed and get on the road to South Dakota. And I got to South Dakota and I helped Jamie move out of James's house. Her neighbor had told me that this was the 7th time that he had beaten Jamie. And while I was up there, we were helping to pack her stuff up, and me, her, and her son had some stuff from Dairy Queen while we were packing everything. And then I went and stayed at her new apartment for the night and rescued an owl with a red-headed officer from Boston. This is in South Dakota, by the way. The officer was from Boston. We weren't in Boston. And he called the animal control, and we found out that the owl was a great horned owl. And we got it rescued. I mean, it flew right into the telephone lines and hit the ground. It was so big I thought it was a goose. While that was going on, there's a guy named Todd Rust who's Christian. He's been friends with me for a while. I helped him find his stepdaughter, Brittany, a few years back. And I also went to visit her when we found out where she was at. And Todd, he took the boy for the night because James was supposed to be gone longer than he actually was. So Todd came and took the boy so that he didn't have to deal with it. And while Todd had the boy and I was rescuing an owl, James pushed Jamie into a bookshelf and broke the bookshelf all to hell. And Jamie ended up with half of her body bruised. Well, we went to they got an amusement park up there. It's not the best amusement park, but it's South Dakota, I mean, it's got old antique trains and stuff there, which is pretty cool. And Me, Jamie, and the boy. I even got pictures on my flip phone still of it. Um, I missed him so much. You got no idea. Anyway, so I let Jamie know that I was going to see Miss Natalie and what was going on with that, and I was going to rescue her, just like I had gone to rescue Jamie. And Jamie said, "Well, you should take her a gift. You know, are you trying to, go out with her boyfriend and girlfriend, or are you guys like just friends?" I said, "Well, we're just friends." So she said, "Well, pick something out in here." She had a whole bunch of gifts that, just basically sit in her closet. They're all unopened. She's like, "Well, we'll give her something, pick something out for her." And I did. I picked out a cup. And then I got on my way back to Virginia. On my way out of South Dakota, I stopped at a McDonald's and I was telling Miss Natalie what had gone on with Jamie and the boy and the rescuing of the owl and all of that. And she got the impression the boy was mine. I was like, "No, I wish I would." Jamie got knocked up with her son because she was on meth and she was with a guy named Mark Cox from Wichita, Kansas, who was a rich man who was also uh, a meth head. And Jamie had a crush on a guy named Patrick Swan. She thought she was in love with at the time. I guess we should skip all of that. That's Jamie's history. That's not mine, and that's not Natalie's. So at that McDonald's parking lot, I was letting Natalie know that I was going to make sure I made it. I was going to make sure I made it. I wasn't neglecting her. I did love her. I did care about her, and I didn't want anything bad to happen. So I went to Aunt B's, and Rory Jepson helped me to put the brakes on my car so that it had new brakes. And Aunt B and Laura Nelson helped me to get the money to make it out to Virginia again. But this time, because I had spent all that money going to rescue Jamie, I didn't really have any money. And although Maddie Boa had planned on going with me, she was on probation for she got busted selling methamphetamines. So it was just me going. And while I was in South Dakota, Mahalia had she was one of the people I was going to Virginia to rescue. She had gotten a plane ticket from her dad for her and her son to go to Boulder, so they weren't in Richmond, Virginia anymore. They were gonna try to hook me up with the art scene there. There was also a woman named Rachel or Rebecca. I knew her better by her street name, but I didn't really know who she was. Um, the guy who had sent me to go rescue her, he had given me a phone. It was his old phone, and he had just gotten a new smartphone, so I had two flip phones I went to Virginia with. When I got to Virginia, Natalie had been expecting me. I'd drawn a picture of Samuel L. Jackson and sent her some art supplies to help keep her mind busy. Um, so when I got there, it was one of those things where, we'd already established a relationship as far as being friends goes. And her and her sister were totally rad. Like, I kept in contact with Natalie the whole time I was on the road. Every day we texted each other. Some days she texted me first, sometimes I texted her first. But it didn't really matter who texted first, we were friends. And it was when I finally got to Virginia, I was like, all right, I'm gonna come over and see you. I'm in Virginia. I was planning on finding a Starbucks because the folks at Starbucks is kind of a welcoming place. So Natalie texted me back, "Shawn, you can't come to my house." And then she was explaining to me why her mother's opinions, which I already knew. A lot of people in America hold those bias and those assumptions and that unfettered hatred, which they try to mask with "in God's name." No, you're a terrible excuse for a human being for doing that to your children. So I Natalie wanted me to draw a picture of her for her mother, and I decided that she wanted something else instead. She decided she didn't want me to draw a picture of her. She wanted me to go see her, and there was a few things that she wanted. So I decided, because Rose had made such wonderful children, that I was going to thank her by drawing a picture of Natalie. And when I was in Virginia, I had started it like the third or fourth time. Um, I guess since we're talking about the first day in Virginia, I was going to go over and see Miss Natalie. Miss Laura and a woman named Melody Harms and the local animal control lady in Chapel, Nebraska, had helped to get me a wheelchair to take to Virginia for Miss Natalie. Also, on the way there, I was having issues with my phone, not having enough money to put more minutes on my phone, um, having issues with even finding a phone card to put on my phone. And I had actually traded my the gift that Miss Jamie had sent with me to give to Natalie. I had actually traded that for enough gas to get all the way to Virginia. So by the time I got to Virginia, I was dirt broke. When she said I couldn't go over to her house, I understood. So she had told me that, her mother had certain opinions, and that, she wasn't going to be welcome of someone like me, and she wasn't going to understand how we love. Me and Natalie did love differently. Differently than all of you, or most of you anyway. She was my best friend. She was pretty much my only friend at that point. Her and Maddie Boa. And there was I was having a lot of anxiety because I had set it up to have a safety network while I was there. Amy and Andrew Witcher. Andrew's mother lives in the Tidewater area of Virginia. That's Chesapeake, Norfolk, that area. And she was a painter, and he was gonna. Amy and Andrew were gonna try to get me a job with her. And before I left for Virginia, it seemed like it was a pretty straightforward thing. And there was a guy in Virginia who I was supposed to be helping to clean up flood damage with. That was his job. That's what he did pretty much full time. Well, by the time I got to Virginia, he was in jail. He'd beaten his wife. So that was out of the question. I was also going to see Moose in North Carolina. That's Brett Roloff, but he was in jail as well. I don't know what for. So it was pretty much just those two young ladies there that I knew. And they invited me to Virginia Beach. They didn't want me being as far away from them as I was, because I picked a Starbucks that was quite a ways away from them. And Alicia, she told me that there was a Starbucks closer to her where she worked. Her and Natalie both used to work at the Cricket store. But because of Natalie hurting her leg, she wasn't working at the Cricket store anymore. And Alicia invited me to stay behind where she works because there was a Starbucks just a couple doors down. She assured me I would be welcome there because her boyfriend works there. And so I did. We went to Virginia Beach at Natalie's request. And from there, I went and parked behind the Cricket store over at the mall. When they came to see me at the other Starbucks, I was using my lasso. Lariat is what it's called, but they call it a lasso, I guess, somewhere. And I was just practicing with it, and they pulled up, and there was a couple of drunk guys with them, and Alicia was driving, and Natalie was drinking a beer. And they drove us to Virginia Beach, and when we were at Virginia Beach, Natalie's leg was bugging her, so one of those drunk guys put her up on his back and was walking across this little wooden bridge that's there, and he dropped her, and she landed right on her foot. She's got this black boot around it to help protect it, and it hurt, obviously. So by the time we got to the beach, those two guys were busy trying to hit on Alicia. She's the popular one. She had pretty colored hair, and she's very outlandish and out there. Very sweet, though, you know? I mean, she's not a mean person. But she gets ideas wrong in her head, and there was a lot of stuff going on between me and Natalie that Alicia just wouldn't have understood, according to Natalie. So, while we were there, Natalie was pretty pissed off. Those drunk guys were pissing her off. They wouldn't stop being drunk assholes, and they wouldn't allow me and her to have a conversation. And we took all of our stuff out of our pockets, and we put it in my cowboy hat, and I laid down on my belly on the beach. And Natalie was sitting, you know, with her foot extended, and I reached up and grabbed her hand, and she squeezed my hand back. And I was kind of scared at that point. I tried to pull it away, but she grabbed a hold of it and made sure that she had a good hold of it. And we talked for a few minutes while she was holding my hand, and Alicia came up behind her and wrapped her arms around Natalie, and I've literally never felt that wonderful in my life. I didn't know that holding somebody's hand was... Anyway, that's the end of this video. We'll start the next one with when we left for Virginia Beach, there was one white flower off the side of that wooden bridge, and I picked it and I wanted to give it to Natalie, but I also didn't want Alicia thinking that she was unappreciated, so I gave it to Alicia as a thank you for bringing Natalie to see me. And then we went to a gas station down there that's pretty popular, and we all got food. Natalie rested her head against my shoulder on the ride home, and we talked a little bit, and that's when I went to the other Starbucks. Um, they had me follow them to it so that I'd know where to go. And that was Virginia Beach was Natalie's idea. The Cricket store, staying behind there, that was Alicia's idea.